We have 4 new DIY home decor projects to share, so join us today as we create some high-end looks for less. Hello friends, welcome back to the Dauer Diaries. If you're new here, I'm Jennifer. Cory and I are so pleased to have you with us on our channel. Achieving that designer look in our home can get costly, so Cory and I love to create those high-end decor looks on a budget, and today we have 4 new items to share with you all, including a vase inspired by Pottery Barn. I hope you find some inspiration, and if you enjoy this type of content, as well as home decorating and antique vintage and thrift shopping, please consider joining our community by clicking that subscribe button. Now, let's get to creating. To create our first look, you'll need a bag of paper mâché. We use the Activa brand of Celluclay to achieve our look. You'll need a bowl. We're using a plastic oval-shaped bowl that has been covered in cling wrap. Now prepare the Celluclay per the instructions, and we used warm water to activate. Once you have your paper mache mixed, you'll begin by applying in sections. Cory made these sections by patting them in to form a kind of large pancake of about 3/4 of an inch thick, and then applying them to the bowl. And when applying each new section, be sure to overlap a bit and then work them into each other gently. Don't worry about it being lumpy because that's the point of paper mache. It has that uneven texture. I also wanted the bowl to have a foot to rest on, so Cory created a smaller ring of paper mache and attached it to the bottom. Be sure to center it so that your bowl will sit right. At this point, don't worry about making the bottom level. You can sand it down once it dries. Cory also created an indentation near the rim to emphasize the shape of the bowl. Also, don't worry about the top or rim of your bowl at this point. Again, you'll be able to sand it once the paper has dried and hardened. I also wanted the bowl to have handles, so I created 2-inch long rectangles about 1 inch thick on all sides. Be sure they are blended into the bowl well so that they won't break off once dry. To help the bowl dry faster, I placed it in front of a small space heater on low. We also had a fan on the floor as well to keep a continual flow of air blowing on the bowl, turning periodically as needed. It took 2 full days for the outside to dry enough for us to remove the plastic bowl and cling wrap. It took another full day for the inside to dry completely. Once the bowl had fully dried, I did some light sanding to make sure the bowl sat level, as well as to knock down any rough areas. You can certainly leave the bowl as is, but I wanted it to look aged, so I opted to use our morning coffee grounds to create that old weathered appearance. I didn't want to use the liquid because I didn't want to saturate the paper, so the grounds worked really well. You could also achieve this look with paint. Just be careful to go in with a mostly dry brush. Once I had the look I was going after, I used a soft, clean brush to remove any loose coffee grounds before having Cory give the entire bowl a coat of poly in matte. I found this French glaze vase at Pottery Barn for $69 and thought I could recreate the look for much less. While I was out thrifting, I found this vase for $4.99 and thought it had a very similar look to the Pottery Barn vase. What I especially loved is that it had a textured bottom and glazed top, just like our inspiration. I was very excited to try out this color River Rock from Krylon. It's a matte spray paint, which helps to create a good base for the acrylic paints that I'll be using here in a bit. This color is perfect. It's a great neutral with just a hint of green undertone, which I thought would work really well for this vase. Cory gave it one coat of paint. Also, before spray painting anything, you should always give it a good cleaning. I allowed the paint to dry overnight before beginning my next step. The inspiration vase has a lighter colored bottom, so I began by pouncing on some paint with a scrunched paper towel to the bottom half. I mixed this color from a butter pecan, linen, and antique white, and since my thrifted vase already had texture on the bottom half, I didn't need to add any baking soda, but if your vase doesn't have the texture, you may want to add baking soda to the paint for that added grit. The Pottery Barn vase also had a more pronounced line defining the glazed upper from the textured lower, so I went in and added more paint to the area where they met. I allowed this color to dry for several hours before proceeding to the next step. As you can see here, it created a lighter banding around the center. Also, the Pottery Barn vase has a bit of an asymmetrical design, which I opted not to do. For the next step, the inspiration has a bit of a darker color on the lower part of the banding as well as modeled into the color of the lighter base. It's very subtle, so I used some watered down acrylic paint in the color Raw Umber to achieve this look. I also made sure to blot the paper towel so as not to get too much paint on in one application. And after finishing that banding, I modeled the same watered down paint onto the bottom portion randomly. Once the bottom had dried to the touch, I began the next step, which was to give the top part of the vase a richer color. I mixed the colors Prairie Sage with just a hint of English Ivy. When I got near the banding, I overlapped the colors just a bit so that it would look like the green top color was over the white bottom color. I allowed this to dry before moving on. The inspiration vase also had some darker areas of green modeled in with the lighter shade, so I added just a hint of black to deepen the green color I had previously mixed and created blotches of paint, which I will blend out here in another step. So I know it looks shocking right now, but it will get better, I promise. I will say I was hesitant to do this, but I knew if I didn't like the way it looked, I could always repaint the top. To help with the blending, I used the lighter green to feather out the edges of the dark green blotching. I will also be putting a whitewash over the top here in a bit to further blend the colors together. The Pottery Barn vase also had a darker green banding around the base, so I watered down some of the green paint and added it, making sure to blot lightly so that the color wasn't too saturated. Last, I took the color Linen and watered it down with just a hint of raw umber and washed it over the entire top part of the vase to help bring all the colors together. You'll want this color to be very light, so make sure you add enough water so that it is less opaque. As the wash went on, it ran down into the bottom lighter color, which is okay since the inspiration vase has dripping, but we will be adding some darker drips here in the next step. Be sure to allow this wash to dry completely before moving on. To create the darker dripping effect that the inspiration vase has, I'm using raw umber watered down. You don't want too many of these sections of drips, so just randomly place them where you like. The color will dry down lighter than it appears at first, so don't panic. I do blot them on occasion, but be sure you don't remove the entire drip. The look in the end will be subtle. Before I added the glaze to the top, I wanted to be sure that the underpaint wouldn't smear, so I had Cory give the entire vase a coat of matte sealant and allowed it to dry. The final step is to add the glaze to the top. I'm using Décor's Duraclear Gloss Varnish. Make sure you only add the glaze to the green top portion of the vase because the lower portion should remain matte. I gave the vase 2 coats of glaze, allowing to dry fully between coats. I love how this vase turned out. I hope you all try this technique, and you can use whatever colors fit your home: browns, blues, shades of terracotta. Honestly, any color combination will work. I absolutely love antique breadboards, but the cost of them is more than I can afford, so Cory said he'd make some to look just like the pretty breadboards I've seen at the antique stores. He used whatever scrap wood he had on hand and gave each board a different look. He first began by drawing out the shape of each board on the scrap wood. To give me a way to hang them if I wanted to, he also drilled out a hole in the handle of each board before cutting out their shape with a jigsaw. The idea was to make each board rustic and unique. He did sand off any splintered wood before using his grinder and a sanding wheel to give each board their own unique characteristics and weathered look. To some of the boards, he burned the edges to darken the wood. The final step was to stain each of the boards. I wanted them to all have a different finish, so we used whatever stain we had on hand. We ended up using weathered oak, special walnut, Jacobean, and black. Cory does love to get creative, so he made his own color combination on this board by creating lines with black stain and then applying a Jacobean over it. He made me a total of 6 boards in varying sizes, colors, and appearance. I love rustic and organic decor, and since we had quick setting concrete on hand from when we made some cement pairs, I thought it would be fun to try and make our own concrete bowl. I had this square plastic bowl that had cracked and was destined for the garbage, and I loved the detail, so I thought it would make a pretty design for our bowl. Cory first began by placing cling wrap on the outside of the bowl. He then mixed up a batch of quick setting concrete. He placed the cement around the plastic bowl. Now be aware that the wet concrete will have a tendency to slide, so make sure you keep building up the sides until it begins to set up. Once the cement started to become firm, he was able to smooth out the edges and sides and cut to form the rim. He used a piece of wood to make a straighter edge along the rim. Now, even though he kept building up the sides, we did end up with some thin areas which ultimately formed holes once the cement had dried. Cory tried some vinyl spackling to patch, but those patches didn't hold, so he ultimately ended up mixing another small batch of cement to patch the problem areas. He then sanded the entire bowl to remove the rough edges. Because of the patching, I needed to try to camouflage those areas. I decided to mix a darker gray color to blend in those patched spots with the rest of the bowl. I used the colors pewter gray, real brown, and a tiny bit of butter pecan. I just blotted the color on with a paper towel until I was satisfied that the areas were no longer noticeable. I then repeated the same process for the inside of the bowl. For the next step, I wanted to add some lightness to the concrete, so I added just a bit of linen to the gray paint I had already mixed up and blotted the lighter color all over the bowl, again making sure to camouflage those patched areas. I also wanted to give the bowl some added dimension, so I added in some brown, almost like it had rust spots. So I added real brown and a touch of burnt terracotta to the gray paint and added it randomly all over the surface of the bowl, going in with less of this color. I made sure to emphasize the edges and curves of the bowl. Once the paint had dried, I went in with the paint wash over the entire bowl to blend everything together. For this color, I mixed linen with just a touch of pewter gray and water. The last step was to seal the bowl. Cory gave it 2 coats of poly in matte. We have truly loved having you all with us today. I can't tell you how much we appreciate that you took time out of your day to spend it with us. We hope you found some inspiration to create your own high-end looks for less. Over the course of the last few years, some of my most cherished home decor has been things we've created. I love the stories they tell and the warm, cozy feeling they give to our home, not to mention the money we've saved along the way. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button and share it with someone you know. It truly helps our channel grow. And if you're new to our little corner of YouTube, please consider subscribing to our channel. We would love to have you as a part of our growing community. If you do subscribe, don't forget to click that bell notification so that you won't miss out on any of our future videos. And make sure you have the notifications selected to all. We want to wish you an amazing week ahead, and we'll see you very soon in the next one. Bye for now.